kid, to this baseball-themed Kid Time Story Time, where we are going to examine not an actual baseball player, but the very first woman, big shot sports executive to ever enter the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Effa Manley story. Thank you, Audrey Vernick, for writing this, the only book ever written about this groundbreaking woman. So, let's begin. When she was in first grade, Effa Brooks was called to the principal's office. "Young lady," the principal said, her voice hard and mean, "why must you play with those Negroes in the schoolyard?" Those Negroes were Effa's brothers and sisters. While Effa's skin was light, like her mother's, her siblings were dark, like their father. People with dark skin couldn't eat in certain restaurants or swim in public pools. Now it seems they couldn't play with their sister either. That's just the way things are, people said. But it never made sense to Effa. So Effa, is she white? Is she black? Is she biracial? You know, that's actually still a mystery to this day. Yes, you are black and white. And she may have been also, her mom is reportedly white and her stepdad was black, but they don't know if her biological dad was white and she just was raised, in the African American community, so she felt black, or if she was a little bit black. That's right, it's a mystery for all time. But the point is, her siblings were definitely darker than her. As Effa grew up in Philadelphia in the early 1900s, America grew up to bold new music, jazz, blared, and folks stepped out in strange new shoes called sneakers. Wow, everything was changing. Now, after high school, Effa moved to New York City, which seemed like the perfect place to live the big life she dreamed of. Everyone was talking about Babe Ruth, the Yankees' new slugging sensation. Effa went to games just to see his mighty swing. Go, Babe, go! Now, nothing prepared her for the crackling energy of the 1932 World Series at Yankee Stadium. New York was beating the Chicago Cubs, and the crowd roared its approval. In that swirl of excitement, Effa met a kind, fun-loving fellow baseball lover, Abe Manley. He adored baseball, and pretty soon, he adored Effa too. They would go out on the town in Harlem, a bustling black neighborhood in New York City. But something in Harlem really bothered Effa. Even in black communities, most businesses were owned by white people, and black people were not hired for most jobs. That's just the way things are, people said. But Effa knew it wasn't right. Look at New York City back in the day. Now, what did she do? She organized the Citizens League for Fair Play. It's a group of community leaders, and they urged Harlem's department stores to hire black sales clerks. Now, the owners said no. Nobody believed a group of black people could change a white businessman's mind, but the league fought anyway. For weeks, they marched in the streets like this, holding their signs, and then they would carry signs that said, "Don't buy where you can't work." Well, they convinced their neighbors to shop elsewhere. The stores lost money, and still no black sales clerks. So they kept on marching, and finally, they won. Newspapers reported the boycott's success. Effa proudly placed the articles in her scrapbook. There she is. Before long, hundreds of black people were working in stores throughout Harlem. So now you could buy where you could work. The world of baseball was headed for change, too. This was just the beginning of her activism and her changes in society. Abe and Effa got married in 1935 and started their own team, the Brooklyn Eagles. It was part of the new Negro National League that Abe had helped establish. Why? Well, they had a Negro National League because black players weren't allowed to play in the regular baseball league. Now, Abe took the team south for spring training, but there was so much to do in Brooklyn. They had to organize schedules, order equipment, arranging transportation. Now, Effa had never done work like that before, but the more she did it, the more she got the hang of it, and she started to like it. So by the time the Eagles moved to New Jersey in 1936 from Brooklyn, Effa was handling almost all the team's business. So she is truly learning on the job. The city of Newark welcomed the Eagles. There was nothing more thrilling than a ball game at Ruppert Field. The hot, sweet, and salty summer smells, the crack of the bat, people in their finest clothes standing, a few at first, willing the ball to keep going. Then everyone at once, the thunderous cheer, the roar, echoing blocks away. When first baseman Mule Suttles came to bat, the crowd chanted, "Kick Mule!" hoping to see his high-stepping home run swing. Monty Irvin had one of the most magnificent arms ever been in baseball, Effa said. He is also an amazing shortstop. Irvin and power-hitting second baseman Larry Doby were one of the best double-play combinations ever. Then there was Leon Day. He played every place on the field except catcher, Effa said. I don't mean he filled in, he played them. In broiling summer heat, Day would pitch the first game of a doubleheader, then trot out to play outfield for the second. Wow, that is versatility. Now, when Effa attended league meetings, the other owners protested, "Baseball's no place for a woman." But over time, they came to respect her because she understood business and she understood baseball. Many owners only wanted to make money from their teams, but Effa cared about hers. She bought the best uniforms and a fancy, comfortable bus. She encouraged players to be active in the community and found them off-season jobs playing ball in Puerto Rico. Her players called her their mother hen. That off-season job stuff, that was important because how were these guys going to make money? The baseball players weren't millionaires back then like they are now. The Eagles had talent and skill, but for years, they were only second best. There was no beating the Kansas City Monarchs. In 1946, they got their chance. It all came down to one final Negro League World Series game. The best view was from the press box, but Effa sat in the stands, where the seats vibrated from the foot-stomping excitement. Newark had a one-run lead going into the final inning. With 2 outs, the Monarchs had 2 men on base. Effa, couldn't even watch. She heard the crushing thwack of bat hitting ball and waited one awful second. Was it? It wasn't a home run? The Newark crowd was cheering. Effa peered through her fingers. The first baseman had made the catch. The Eagles were world champions. It was Effa's proudest moment. The next year, this is when stuff really starts to change. Jackie Robinson joined the Brooklyn Dodgers. He was the first black player in the major leagues. So many people, not just baseball fans, were proud and hopeful about change and equality in America. Many black Americans became Dodgers fans that year because of Jackie. Unfortunately, well, for the Negro Leagues, this means they lost fans and started losing their best players to the major leagues. And they would lose their players and not even get paid for them. Like now, you exchange a player, you have to give something to the team that you took them from. Not back then. Some major league owners didn't know Negro League players had contracts, and some didn't care. When Branch Rickey, the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, signed Don Newcombe in 1945, the Eagles lost an important player and received nothing in return. Now, Effa was glad to see her players get their big break, but she believed all teams, not just the white ones, should be paid for their players. She talked to the press and made people think about how unfair it was. Instead of saying, "That's just the way things are," some began to ask, "But why?" That's an important question. So when Cleveland Indians owner Bill Veeck became interested in Larry Doby, he was ready to negotiate. In 1947, he paid the Eagles $15,000, and Doby became the first black player in the American League. Now, Effa was losing another great player, but she wished him well. She was happy for him and told him, "Doby, keep hitting the ball out of the park." And he did. After that, the major league team owners always paid the Negro League teams for their players. But you know what ended up happening? More and more players left, and soon Negro League ball came to an end because it was time to integrate. In 1952, Abe, Effa's husband, became ill and died, and she lost her best friend, her business partner, and her truest love all at once. She often looked at that scrapbook that she made to remind her of the good times. As she browsed those pages, something kept nagging at her. The history of the Negro Leagues was just slipping away. That's just the way things are, people said. But it broke Effa's heart. In the 1970s, she didn't stop there. She didn't settle for just the way things are. She began a letter writing campaign to convince the National Baseball Hall of Fame to acknowledge the best Negro League players. Now, the Hall had honored some who had also played in the majors, like Jackie Robinson in 1962, but none who had played their entire career just in the Negro Leagues. When the Hall appointed a committee to consider honoring the Negro League stars, Effa was thrilled. That's what she wanted. Between 1971 and 77, the committee voted to induct 9 Negro League players, including former Eagle star Monty Irvin. Then it was announced it had completed its work. What? One? Just one? Well, Effa was outraged. She could name dozens more who deserve the honor, especially 2 of her Eagles, the slugger Mule Suttles and Biz Mackey, who had managed the 1946 championship team. She continued writing to the Hall until she died in 1981. But was her work done? You know, when you do good work, you plant seeds that may bloom after you're gone. The Hall was not finished with Negro League players after all. Over the years, more of Effa's favorites were inducted, but many, including Suttles and Mackey, were not. It wasn't right. It was just the way things were until 2006. On July 30th, Suttles and Mackey and 10 other Negro League players were finally inducted into the Hall of Fame. Effa would have been so proud. Think that there's Mule Suttles, Biz Mackey, Willard Home Run Brown, Andy Lefty Cooper, Ristobal Torriente, and Ray Brown. I wonder where he came from. Something else happened that day. Something amazing. Effa was inducted into the Hall of Fame right along with them. What? In baseball's long and storied career history, Effa Manley was the only person, the only woman ever to be honored in such a way. Can you imagine if she had been alive to experience that? The incredible feeling of being the very first woman allowed into baseball's Hall of Fame. Man, that's such a big deal to be the first of anything. She was recognized for all she did for her players. She was honored for her civil rights work and for getting the major leagues to treat Negro Leagues with respect. The Negro League teams. On Effa's gravestone, it says, she loved baseball. And in 2006, baseball proved it loved her right back. And I want to go back just one page real quick because I had noticed something that caught my eye. The illustrators of books and the writers, they oftentimes leave little clues in the books. And if you're paying attention, you start catching little clues. But they don't say what they're doing, but you kind of pick it up. And I noticed here with her memorabilia when she was looking sad, it talked about New York Cuban Stars, Newark Eagles, Cuban Stars. So I noticed that specifically. So then as I'm flipping over here to the end and I see Cristobal Torriente, a very Spanish name. So I looked him up real quick. He was a Cuban outfielder in the Negro League baseball team. He was with the Chicago American Giants, the Kansas City Monarchs, and the Detroit Stars. He played back in 1912 to 1932. A long 20-year career. And he's actually buried in Havana, Cuba to this day. So, and that caught my eye, this thing. And then I thought, I wonder if there's a tie. And there sure is. You always have to look out. These really smart illustrators will leave little clues in the book that teach us just a little bit more. And isn't that nice on her gravestone? She loved baseball. And the cover of her book, she loved baseball. The Effa Manley story. Oh, you want to do something very important? And be in a Hall of Fame? Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to work on that then, shan't we? I know you can't play baseball, but maybe we can find something else incredible that you can do. All right. And you know it. You have to just never accept things the way they are, right? And keep pushing forward for progress and to make good things happen in the world. And who knows? Maybe you'll end up in some Hall of Fame somewhere, someday. See you next time, kid, on Kid Time Story Time.